Well, another incredible Mind Freedom Breaking Barriers podcast here today. We have a very special guest who I met probably a little over a year ago by chance, listening to one of his podcasts. That was absolutely incredible. It inspired me to actually reach out to him. So, give you a little background. We're here today with Barry Nicolaou, which I'm really excited for. Barry's all the way from Australia this morning, spending his time with us. We're not going to keep you long, Barry. We want you to get back to your beautiful daughters and your beautiful wife.
All good, all good.
No, well, I'm honored to be here with you today, and I wrote down a few notes just to give you the proper introduction. Barry is a #1 best-selling author of the 11 Master Secrets to Business Success and Personal Fulfillment. That book you wrote in or released in 2015. And
Correct.
he
Yep.
followed it up with his book, Move the Mountains, which was just released not just a couple short months ago in February. He focuses on deconstruction of mindset blocks. That's huge, which surround cognitive fear, old wired, subconscious paradigms, inherited thinking, in their connection to real world experiences and expectations. And this is such a huge part, honestly, Barry, of everyone's life right now. I mean, we're moving into a phase of fear and everybody's scared of different things happening. So I'm really happy to have you on. So let me introduce you, and you can say a little bit about yourself as well. This is Barry Nicolaou, everyone.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. What a beautiful introduction. And thank you also for making this happen. You know, technology in this way is just sensational, right? Like, there's a lot of flaws with social media sometimes, people can say. There's a lot of toxicity, but technology like this enables us to communicate across the world. So it's just cool. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I guess for me, it all started in 2015. I had an epiphany at a cemetery of all places that really jolted me into purpose and clarity and understanding and appreciation and gratitude and getting to a sense of the finiteness of life and what I wanted. At the time, I was earning good money. I was supporting my family. But there was a fulfillment aspect that wasn't quite being present in my life. We all know, and we probably know some wealthy people, and I know probably five really wealthy people, and two of them are fulfilled, and the other three are just doing it for the monies, so to speak. The two I'm super close to, the three not so much, and it ends up being something that I've wanted to encapsulate in my life. I want to be able to not just spend time with my daughters and my family, but be in a sense that there is a fulfillment aspect of life that comes from being in service, being of value to people. And that usually comes back to kindness, not just outwardly directed kindness to the world, but inwardly directed kindness to yourself. Because, I mean, if we're completely open and honest, you can't give away what you don't have. You know, you can't give away 5 oranges if you don't have 5 oranges to give away, right? So for me, it ended up being a very reflective moment at that cemetery in 2015. I had this, I guess, these 3 words, that were bombarded to me on a level that I couldn't quite grasp at that point. And those 3 words were live your life. I've spoken about this hundreds of times on hundreds of podcasts since that time, and it still gives me the shivers. It still gives me goosebumps to realize how these words were communicated. And I guess that was needed for me to break me out of apathy and to break me out of a sense of mundaneness of just kind of going through the routine. And that I had more to offer, and I knew I had more to offer, but I didn't quite know how to action that. It's almost like having the ingredients but not having the recipe.
Right.
And I had all the ingredients on the table, but there wasn't anyone to show me how to make this recipe work. So that made a lot of it made me go inside and research people in the world that had all the ingredients and that had the recipe and how did they do it. And it ended up being a really deep, fulfilling experience for me. It wasn't meant to be a book, the first book. It was just meant to be an inspirational work of mine that I wanted to keep internally, but then everything pointed towards this thing getting published. And then you identify that there are red lights and green lights in life, and the green lights for this book to be published were happening quite quickly and quite obviously. So I tend to just follow where the green lights go as well. So it just ended up, the publisher came around, the Facebook ad came around about publishing books, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I met John for a coffee, and we caught up, and we got to #1 on Amazon in 6 countries and 19 categories on Amazon. It felt great, and then people were kind of like, Barry, you've written a book, this is fantastic. And you start to identify the people that you want to surround yourself with, and the people that aren't necessarily in your corner, but perhaps you might think that they are. So you start to get quite specific about who your true believers are, and you surround yourself with those people more and more as you get older and you progress.
I love that.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I want you to go back to the green light just for a minute, because, when you hear someone say, I just followed the green lights, just tell everybody a little bit who's sitting there saying, well, I don't get any green lights. And there's a little bit more, I think, to it that you and I both know, that you have to be open to be able to follow the green light. So was that a process for you to get there? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Listen, if you're in a situation, just jumping to the end here, if you're in a situation where you don't know what the right thing to do next, you should be able to action what you can. Just look at what's in front of you and go, okay, I don't know what the right thing to do is. I've got green lights, yellow lights, red lights everywhere. If I had to identify 3 or 4 green lights right now, what would they be? Just write them down, right? It could be simple things. It doesn't have to be world-changing green lights. I'm talking about, well, I can make my bed right now. I can go and make a few calls right now. I can do that. I can go and eat healthy food right now. That's a green light. I can get enough sleep tonight. That's a green light. I can look after my family. That's a green light. And what you're actually doing is you're pushing forward, moving momentum where you can. Right? Now, you might identify some orange lights and some red lights. For me, I've looked at the red lights, and it's really interesting. I haven't gone head on towards the struggle. I've pushed all green and yellow lights, and it's really interesting. What's happened is they've circumvented the reds. It's like a roundabout. They've gone around the reds. And I'm like, oh, wow, that struggle that I thought that I had to go to, it's like not even important anymore. And it was all in my mind. So if you are experiencing reds and yellows, I promise you there are some greens. Just make sure that you're pushing those forward, and you're learning and you're growing. And even though it might seem that you're not really moving ahead, I promise you that you are. Because there are some people that aren't even pushing the green lights. They're not even doing it. So just identify them, and the best thing I would do is write them down. Just write down 10 things you can action in the next 48 hours that would feel that you're moving forward in all aspects of life, not just financial, like in all aspects, in health, in nutrition, in charity, in sleep, in everything. Just make sure that you are moving forward, even if it feels minuscule. Just keep moving forward. What tends to happen, then the big things start to shift as well. Because I guess the way to look at it is that the actual river is moving downstream. Eventually, the larger boulders and the sticks, because of the force of the river, because you're moving forward with all your green lights, will start to slowly move as well. And you'll see solutions to problems that you couldn't really see before because you were so focused on the red light struggle. So it's important to move ahead in all 3 colors, but at the same time, please move ahead with your greens and your yellows as much as possible, and then the reds will eventually move as well.
That's fantastic, because I think the one thing I hear you say is action. If you're taking action in the green lights, more will come, more will open up to you, and more will come to you in a way that you're not necessarily searching for it. It just flows to you.
Absolutely. 100%. And it might sound for someone very logically thinking, or very left brain thinking right now, it might sound esoteric, or it might sound, oh, that doesn't make sense, that's woo-woo science. But the science of the new book is really incredible because it really tells you what the power of belief does. Power of belief sets up very different trajectories for people's lives. Like I know people that are on, just financially speaking, I know people that they think that they're worth $500,000 a year.
Right.
And I know similar people that are only, oh, Barry, I'm only worth 60,000 a year. Now the education between those two people is very similar. What's different is that the one that thinks that they're worth $500,000 a year, there is a sense of belief in them that the value that they can add to the world is at that level.
I absolutely love that. This is why I love talking with you, Barry, and listening to you, because you have such wisdom and knowledge that so many people need to hear. And with that, I want to take a quick pop into your book to
Please,
reference
please.
something. I'm going to bounce back and forth over a couple chapters because I think what you're saying, is critical. And one of the things that's so important for a lot of people is your chapter 4. I mentioned this right before we started with habitual and inherited thinking practices, because a lot of us come up in this world. The first line is many of us seek self-approval for our decisions from those we admire most, which is our closest family and friends, the people that raised us. And a lot of times we grow up in habitual and inherited practices that aren't always positive, or maybe don't leave you feeling that you can do more than what you can, right? It's cyclical. If your parents are earning 60,000 a year, you think that probably when you're coming up, you should be earning 60,000 a year. So can you
Exactly.
talk a little bit to that? Because that's really important for a lot of people that I know that you've worked with in the past. I'm sure people I've worked with, even corporations. I know you work with corporations as well. And there's people
I
in
do.
there that have these mindsets. So if you could elaborate, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really great place to start, Heidi, because it's interesting what I tend to find. You find a lot of people jumping to technique and to sales understandings and how to make more money, essentially, how to increase results, right? But what's not said is that you're trying to build framework on a house when you haven't identified what the base is yet. And it's really important. If you are to build a house, the first thing that the builder will come and do is they'll excavate and they'll put a concrete slab down. Now, the idea of a concrete slab is what? Is security, is understanding, and that the weight of the house is on this slab that can take the weight, right? And they can understand that, the concrete slab has a purpose. What happens in mindset and life is a lot of corporations, individuals, leadership models in Australia, in the US, in the UK right now, I've got a customer. And what they do is they jump to sales technique before they've understood what the person believes about the world and believes about themselves, right? So if you are, for example, if someone gets a job and their mandate is to grow their business, but they believe inherently or habitually that they really can't achieve that deep down, right? But they might say, yes, we can achieve it and all that, but there's a deep down seated belief that they've never done it before. They think it's absolutely astronomical, that they don't see themselves achieving whatever the company or themselves or whoever wants for them, right? It's really important to realize that that's got to be addressed first. You've got to understand that what is your base of your house built from? Are you building on sand? Because you know what? You can build a framework on sand. You just better hope that the earth doesn't shake,
Right.
or that the tide doesn't come in, right? Because what will happen is it'll erode your structure, it'll all fall to the ground. So it's really important to note that. And I know I'm jumping here, but I reference Einstein in the book a few times because his philosophical views were just as important as his scientific discoveries. And he mentions, he's like, the most important decision all of us have to make is whether we believe we live in a hostile or toxic universe, or whether we believe we live in a friendly, inspired universe, right? And until we consciously make that decision, until we consciously say, it is this way, it is friendly, let's just say, right? Then we are forming our concrete base on our house, and we're going, right, it's friendly. I'm going to offer value to people, and I'm going to build this framework with all my green lights moving forward. And this makes sense to me, right? If you're the kind of person that says, well, Barry, the world's toxic and hostile, and let me give you the ideas and the examples of why that's true. And you sit down and you listen, and they mention the war in Ukraine, and they mention COVID, and they mention the financial crisis that's happening in the world, and all these valid reasons, right, why the world is toxic. You have to know that thinking that way will not build the house on the framework that you want to build.
Right.
Because you are constantly being a fear-based fight or flight scenario where you think that money is limited, everything is in limitation, when it is not. There is an abundance of money out there, there is an abundance of opportunity out there, there is an abundance of connections out there, there is an abundant way for you to add value to people's lives, which, by the way, is reciprocal. You add value, you feel good moving away from adding value. So there's no losers. It's brilliant. Like, there's this beautiful way that we've been engineered. The mechanics of our world is just incredible. The more value you give, the more value you will receive. So it's really incredible. Habitual and inherited thinking practices are based on that. So let's just start with quickly habitual. Habitual are the thoughts that you keep on thinking on autopilot. They've been picked up over years of feeling comfortable. Paradigms have set into our mindsets, and we just keep doing the same thing over and over again because more or less we're used to it. Inherited thinking blocks is biological thinking blocks that get passed down generationally. So your great-grandparents, your grandparents, your parents, and yourself, right? They thought a certain way. Your great-grandparents might have been in scarcity. They might have been in war. They might have had nothing to their name. They might have just been surviving on the breadline. That gets passed down as for example, don't take risks in life. If you take risks, you will lose. That gets passed down to your parents. Be careful, stay away from people with business opportunities because you could lose everything. Trust me, my great-grandparents know, right? And all of a sudden, we are in a new world with new opportunities using yesterday's paradigms to navigate a new world full of opportunities. Now, I'm not saying you jump into everything, but I'm saying that if you don't identify who you are, what you love, what value you want to bring to the world, and tie that in with the opportunities that are present today with technology and the value that you're giving, then you are losing out. You are getting to a position where you're not giving the best of yourself to your world. And if you are not doing that, how on earth can you expect it to come back?
Right. And you're limiting yourself.
Yeah.
Limiting yourself greatly, and there's so much out there to offer. I hear a
So
saying all the
much.
time, from a lot of people saying, either build your dream or build someone else's dream.
Yeah.
And I get that to a certain degree because that is true, but not everybody has to be an entrepreneur or a business owner.
No.
You can build your own dream through someone else's dream as long as you know what that is. If you're going into the 9 to 5 every day and you just are doing it for a paycheck, you're not building your dream. You're just working for someone else. So I love what you're saying about all of that, Barry, because it's so true. And it comes back to all of us and why we behave the way that we behave. It's our environment, how we, have grown up, what we've been told. We soak all of that in. So I love that. So that leads me into something else. You mentioned the word toxic. And there's one thing that I love in chapter 3, the unconscious gardener. You put in here energy barometer. So that's really important too, because we're learning about ourselves, and I know I'm bouncing back and forth, but we're learning about ourselves, the things that we grew up believing in our behaviors based on what our parents, grandparents, in times have changed, things are different. So the barometer, the energy barometer, is really important to know how you feel, because a lot of people have it I think we're all born with it, but not many people know how to use it, know how to work with it, know how or understand it when it's happening to them. So will you share a few thoughts on that as well?
Absolutely, and it's a really good segue to consider this as well. Um, I put the energy barometer in the book because I absorb people's energy quite intensely. And when I'm in a room, I'm speaking in Sydney in about 5 weeks to a room of about 250 people. We've got a wellness event in Sydney, which is Australia's largest wellness event. Anyway, I used to beg to be at this wellness event, and now they're calling me and saying, Baz, would love to have you again. So it's like the ninth straight year presenting. And it's so great to be amongst like-minded people. And what I find is that when I'm in a situation where I'm giving the best of myself and the other person is doing the same, our energy goes like this and it both rises, right? If you have a situation where you're giving the best of yourself and the person in front of you, you sense that there's something there that is sapping that energy from you, then what will happen is that you'll elevate them and they'll de-elevate you. So you'll end up kind of, instead of going like this, what'll actually happen, you're up here and they're down here, and what'll happen is they'll rise and you'll sink slightly. And you'll leave that encounter feeling just a little bit more drained than when you entered the front door. So what I try to do with myself is I try, and by the way, you'll never completely erase those conversations, right? Because people go through pain and you can't necessarily walk away from everyone that's going through pain. And honestly, we're going through pain too. So we want our catch-ups to talk to people about what we're going through. But what I try to do in this space that I'm in is hang around with as many people that want the best for me and I want the best for them. And then what tends to happen is our energy both rises and it fuels me. So it's really important to realize that, you know, when you do catch up with anyone, that there is this sense of, have this sense of understanding and knowing that you will draw from each other's energy. And if you're the kind of person that's entrepreneurial or starting their own business or wants to give back to the world and wants to add value to the world and wants to take a few calculated risks, you know, and just to put their purpose out there, and you're catching up with someone who's very risk averse or who's very comfortable in their job or who's very mundane in their thinking, then what's going to end up happening is there's a mismatch of energy. There's like a misalignment of energy. And while they might be happy for you on the surface, they will do nothing to help you rise. Because that kind so I've recognized those conversations, and what I do now is I limit those conversations to, you know, instead of once a week, those conversations are happening once a month. So then I've got more fuel in my tank to keep going and to help me on my path. And so, you know, because I've got concerns about what I'm doing too, Heidi. You know, I'm not saying I'm on top of the mountain here saying, oh, I'm got everything worked out, because I'm working stuff out, right? But I know that people that are on the same journey have solutions and ideas that I never thought of that I can implement based on our catch-ups. And I would rather those conversations and me possibly add value to their world in some sort of respect. All of a sudden, we both become conduits of inspiration. You know, the inspiration goes back and forth continually, and we both find new ways to add value to our world, which means then adding value to our environment and helping as many people as we can. So it's brilliant to know that that's happening. How much time you want to spend with the people that, you know, you're close to, or strangers or family or whatever your dynamics are in your life, is totally up to you. But for me, I've had to become very specific. If I want a specific outcome, I have to be very specific in who I choose. It's just like nutrition. If you want a healthy diet, you will not go to fast food every day. And the answer to that is because you want to have whole foods. You want to feed your body good food, because you know that good food equals good sleep, which equals good exercise, which equals a fit body, which equals a fit mind, which equals adding value to the world.
Yeah.
And they all connect.
It's true. And it's known that my grandmother used to say this as I was growing up, show me your five closest friends and I'll show you who you are. Right.
Brilliant,
It's
brilliant.
the same exact concept. And, when she would say that, of course, when you're young, you're not thinking much about it. But as you grow older and you start getting out there, and I'm very much like you in that way, I absorb energy, positive, negative, good or bad, whatever's going on emotionally, I absorb it all as well. So that stood out for me. And I know that stands out for a lot of people because I've had these conversations with many people in my coaching and just in different environments that you can love from afar. And, this does not mean that you cannot be with people, your family or people that you haven't chosen in life. Because, let's face it, family we don't choose. We are born into that environment. So you can still love from afar if you need to. So that was really important to me. And, Barry, I know I've taken up some of your time, so
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I'm so happy that you're here with me. I've been waiting for this for so long, and I want everybody to hear about, you and your book and all of that. You have
Thank
no
you, Heidi.
idea. So there's two more things I just want to just go quickly over with you. I picked out one of my favorite quotes in your book. You have so many, but this I love hearing you say when you say it, because you've said it on several podcasts, and I just absolutely love it. It's number 16. If you can do something about a situation, do it. If you can't, what worth is there in worrying about it? Control the controllable, the rest is wasted energy. This may be simple to, anyone else, but to me, this is huge because not everybody is doing this, right? A lot of wasted time on worrying and fear and, what can happen, especially with the climate of the world today.
Absolutely, and I think it's a really good quote in the sense of being specific about where you want to pursue your energy. It's really interesting. We talk about currency. Let's just talk about currency. And every time we talk about currency, people refer it to money. The new currency of the 21st century is not money. It is energy and how you spend that energy. Right? So so you can look at energy, you can look at time, and you can look at money. Energy is the one thing that you've got today that you can direct where you spend it to. Finances will flow in and out consistently. You'll make some money, you'll pay some bills, you'll go on a holiday, you'll pay some more bills, you might make some more money, you're doing really well, you'll pay some more bills, and it's kind of like there's this fluid number 8 that just keeps going around and around and around, and that's great. But energy, once you spend it today with your finite existence, right? So you've got 70, 80, 90 years if you're blessed, right? Once you spend it, it is gone. And it is gone forever. So you think to yourself, right, today is in Sydney right now, it's Sunday. I've got family catch-ups today. We've got Greek Easter today. So we're going to go and kind of sit around and feeling blessed that, what's happened in our world. And you get to a situation where the energy that you spend ends up being something that you feel aligned with. Because everyone at our catch-up today, for example, will be spending their finite energy on our catch-up. So everyone's there with this end goal of understanding that I choose you. And that's huge because we don't know how many choose yous we have left, right? And getting back to the cemetery in the first book, it's crazy, Heidi. You think that the graves are full of 80s and 90-year-olds, and they're not. They're full of 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds. And then your heart breaks because there's a child cemetery right next door. So you don't know. You don't know how much time you have. We think we do. And because it comes one day at a time, we think, well, we've got a long time. We don't. We don't have as long as we think. We've got 75 autumns, 75 summers, maybe 80 winters. That's it. And so then, isn't it our mandate then to add value, to shine as bright as we can in the limited time we have left, which then comes back to how we spend our energy, and then comes back to controlling the controllables and letting the rest go? Sitting there and worrying about a specific future that might or might not happen, or being fearful. every time I go into fear now, I catch myself. And it's taken me years and years to do this because I let fear have free reign in my life for the longest time. And I now catch it at the door and I'm like, you're not allowed in. Well, if you are allowed in, it's because I say so. It's not because you've got free reign. And I moved from fear to a very trust based thinking or trust based authority, which is Barry, you're on this path right now. And if you're listening, you know, whoever's listening right now, you're on this specific path. You've got these circumstances in front of you. Go back to the green lights. Where are they? Let me push them forward. Let me add value to the world. And I think that leads to a no regret life. You get to, if you're lucky enough to get to your 70s and 80s, you get to a position where you've said, I fought a good fight. I've done my best. What tends to break us is when we get to that hospital bed, if that's how it happens, where we wish we could turn back the clock and take the risks in our earlier years. I wish I tried this. I wish I had my own business. I've always wanted to be in direct selling. I've always wanted to have my own real estate agency. I always wanted to open my own coffee shop. I always wanted to do that, but fear held me back. I wish I could turn back the clock. Well, in this podcast, we've got the time machine. Today's the youngest you're ever going to be. Like, the youngest today. So what are you going to do with your youth? What are you going to do with it now? And the decisions you make today on mindset, on what you want to do with your future, is the most important decision. You're deciding what your base of your house is going to be made from. That's what you're doing today. You're saying, this is a concrete base and I'm going to make this work, and then I'm going to build my framework on top of that.
Oh,
So
Barry,
yeah.
give me chills. Oh my gosh, I'm like emotional over here listening because everything you're saying is so brilliant. And,
Mm.
for you to
Oh,
be,
thank you.
honestly, it really is, because for you to be at this point in your life and being able to share this with others and teach others how to live without regret and how to, achieve, everything that they desire is, everything that you said is just, it gave me chills. I feel like I'm frozen in time here, like just taking it all
Thank you,
in.
Heidi. Thank you.
Honestly, Barry, and I have so much more I want to talk to you about, but maybe we can come back again, because I know even more so now where it's Greek Easter. Happy Easter. And
No, I've got 20 more minutes, so you've got time.
okay, I keep trying to cut myself off for a time
Don't
view,
do
but
that. It's
oh my
great.
God, you gave me chills. And as I'm listening to you, I remember the very first time that I heard you and you talked about the cemetery trip.
Mm.
And, we didn't touch on it here, but part of one thing that really connected me to you was when you mentioned the cemetery of gifts and talents that are
Mm.
lost, or you were, kind of guessing, how many of these people didn't really live their life, especially being so young.
Mm.
And one of my missions with Mind Freedom is to show people that they are worthy of anything that they want. They have the ability to do anything that they desire. I've seen too many young people take their life because of chapter 4, inherited belief that they weren't good enough. So anything that they did was not good enough for the people that they love the most or that they surround themselves the most, or they had something about them that maybe um, their parents didn't believe in, and they couldn't live their life as their truest self because of that. So there's so many people, and that is something that has touched my life, my family, my kids. I mean, I know so many people, at least every other week I hear of someone passing who's young, maybe 20s to even 50s is young, um, due to that. And in a lot of cases, it's self-worth. It's self-worth. I mean, I can't, a lot of people talk about mental illness and things like that. And I think, you're not born into the world that way. It's through how the environment that you're in, right? That, does that.
Absolutely.
So when you talk
Mm.
about the cemetery with the gifts and talents that are missing, or that some people could have not fulfilled in their life, I mean, that's huge, and what you said, what you were just said a few minutes ago, I'm stumbling over my words because you touched me like unbelievably. And I don't want to
No, you're
cry
very
because I have a
welcome.
very ugly cry, so I'm not going to do that.
No, no, no. Listen, listen. If there's inspiration that I can offer to anyone that's listening, it would come down to this. Um, you are of God.
Mhm.
Like that's your lineage.
Right.
You can't get higher. Like, it's like to realize how special you are. You are of a divine creator that created from thought.
Right.
You're from, and it's really fitting that it's Easter for me. Tomorrow is Monday for me, and it is the day that Jesus rose
Yeah.
from the dead, which is really fitting actually to have this conversation this particular day. And you are a divine spark from the fire itself. Like if the fire is God and you're sitting around a campfire right now and you're seeing the little sparks fly out here and there as the wood crackles, right?
Right.
And you're one of those sparks. You have come from the fire. That's where you came from.
Mhm.
So if God has the ability to create from thought, and we are of that lineage, then our 70 to 80 years that we're blessed, we could be blessed to have,
Mhm.
that's how we demonstrate that lineage that we can create from thought. That's how we do it. That's if there was a meaning or a purpose to our lives. And there's a lot of philosophers in the world that would be debating this endlessly. And my simple answer to that would be that we are to define that whatever we think and whatever we give emotion to, we can create. Now, God's not saying, well, it's only going to be good stuff.
Right.
He's saying you can create from both sides of the spectrum. You can create from anger. You can create from pain. You can create from frustration. You can create anything. You can create from any emotion. So when we see pain and we say, well, God's not in the world, look at all this pain. Well, hang on, how much of that is man inflicted? And how
Mhm.
much of that do you see a loving father wanting to inflict pain? Or do you see a loving father going, this is how they learn?
Mhm.
And you got children, I've got girls, I've got two girls. I don't necessarily run to them when they trip, because they've got to learn to pick themselves back up, because one day I'm not going to be here and I need them to pick themselves back up. Now, if that's my 6-year-old Grace who runs around and scrapes her knee,
Yeah.
I need her to dust herself off and pick herself. Right. Obviously, if she falls down and she breaks a leg, I'm not going to sit back. Right.
Right.
But if it's something, and I think that's the same way we're treated. If we are going through a challenge or a struggle or a frustration on any level, then God is going, okay, let's see how they handle this. Let's see how they dust themselves off. If need be, I will step in.
Right.
Right? But the idea is to not use God as a crutch for everything in our lives. He's got to know that we are his children. We've got to live independently from him. But at the same time, he is a loving father. And that's the philosophy that I've lived and I've embodied and I've breathed. And if having children is an example of his love to us, then it is the best example we can hope for. Because we are in a situation where we can learn as we go. We can teach as we go, and then we can learn as much as adults, as parents. We learn just as much from being able to teach these lessons as the child does being able to absorb them.
And that's another great segue. You're absolutely right,
Mm,
Barry, into gratitude, because in
mm,
that chapter in your book, you had studied the different religions around the world, and the one universal um, thing in common was gratitude.
mm,
So, hearing you talk about that with your children and God and all, everything that you've just said, it makes sense that gratitude is a universal piece between everything. Because if you look at all the different religions, it always comes down to gratitude, affirmations, I am, um, all of that. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that and how
absolutely. No,
important it is.
It's so important. Like from a global, say, religious standpoint, it's kind of big stuff to talk about. But just to give you a quick example, if you had a rabbi and a priest, like a Christian priest, and you had a Hindu holy man and a Muslim cleric, and around the coffee table, and they were all quite pleasant and they were all quite peaceful, and they're discussing the different facets of their beliefs and their followers and what their holy books are saying. And and you come in, Heidi, and you come in as someone that's not of any of those faiths. Let's just example, right?
Mhm.
And you kind of throw, you guys have got such deep views and it's beautiful and whatever it is, and you throw gratitude on the table as a conversation starter, right? It's for everyone to kind of start talking about something. What you'll find with all four of those people is that they'll all begin to nod their heads, and you'll have a commonality. You've just thrown down a piece of commonality
Mhm.
that everyone can refer back to their own religions and give examples of why gratitude is so important. And from a global, say, religious wanting peace in the world perspective, that is a really great place to start. So let's just bring it down now to gratitude in a workplace. If you've got three or four people, and you've got the boss sitting there, and you've got your employees around, and you've got C-suite managers or whatever it is, and you find that one piece of commonality, which is let's just say, we all want this business to move forward, and we all want to have great lives from this business. I'm so grateful that we've got our jobs and we can actually move forward and these opportunities to add value. It's really cool that we've got that. What you'll find is that all those four people will also nod their heads and
Mhm.
they'll say, that's a great starting point to have this conversation. And what you've done is you've interjected mindset into the conversation before any sales techniques or any kind of this is how you make money, or this is how the company should profit, or whatever. Just put that aside for a minute, right?
Right.
First, concentrate on the base of the house. Like,
Mhm.
get that hard and set.
Yeah.
And then you've got a position to go, right, we all agree on gratitude. We all agree on appreciation of each other. If there's a problem, we can discuss it openly, and we're not going to take offense. We just need to find a way through. We need to make sure that there are win-wins here for everyone. Then everyone feels heard and connected. Then you've got the ability to build and have conversations about how do we build this thing? How do we get excited about this thing? And what I find is that a lot of us in humanity, at different levels, the religious level and corporate level, even in our families, right?
Right.
What we tend to do is we try to instill this is how you do things before you even get the people on board
Right.
mentally. And what tends to happen is that those people are never really on board. They'll show you that they are, or maybe they won't. I mean, maybe they'll just say, "I want to leave," but you'll never get them at 100%. And just like those religious men, those holy men sitting around the table, if you wanted to interject a slightly controversial view at that table, well, you've got a concrete base of gratitude that you first established that allows you then to throw in a few curlies if you really wanted to kind of get the conversation really flowing, and keep the peace, but at the same time see each other's views. And every religious person around that table, or the corporate table, every person feels heard, even if it's not the chosen direction that the company is heading in or whatever it is, but they felt heard and understood. And I think that's how you give 100%. And then technique and sales comes as a flow-on effect to that. It doesn't come before.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
Mm.
And it's interesting how we started the conversation on the slab or the base, right?
Hmm.
Here in
Hmm.
the US, we call it a foundation.
Great.
You got to get your foundation poured, and it has to be solid. And,
Mm.
this is something that you'll probably resonate with. There are certain parts of the US and in my area that the foundation, the concrete was built with cheap materials that was stuck into it, right? To make it
Wow.
move quick. So now some of
Mm.
these foundations are starting to crumble. So
Mm.
it just goes back to what you were saying about having a solid foundation, a solid slab, a solid base
Mm.
is I think the springboard for anyone's life in anything they're going to do as a parent, as an entrepreneur, as a corporate employee, as a friend, in relationships, no matter what it is. And if you try to do it the cheap way, or try to go around it in a way that is not solid, it's going to crumble, So now
Absolutely.
there's thousands of homes that are crumbling, the base is crumbling, and they have to go into the remediation to fix it instead of doing that solid base from the get-go. And a lot of us
Yeah.
have to do the remediation, right, to fix our foundation because of, again, chapter 4,
Yeah.
what we've learned and inherited. So
Yeah.
I love this conversation, Barry, with you. It seemed it's come full circle, and I have to get this book into other people's hands. So I definitely want to pop the link into this and tell everybody how they can reach you also in the comments. But how
Okay.
about you? So tell us any other last things that you would like to say, because I have picked your brain a lot today. And again, I appreciate your time. I see the sun came up in the backdrop there. You've got some light
Yes.
now, and you have a beautiful backdrop. So tell us,
Thank you.
anything that you want to share with us that you're feeling in your heart and
Listen,
inspired.
I first of all, I want to say, Heidi, you are doing amazing work. Like you, we've known each other for probably what, about 2 or 3 years now.
Roughly.
You, I keep seeing your posts on LinkedIn, your amazing podcast shows that you've already done, the work that you're doing out making an impact. Whether you know it or not, you're making an impact. You're doing amazing work. It's not easy to do what you're doing, because a lot of the time we're faced with, and myself as well, we're faced with, when you look at the night sky, there's a lot of blackness, and we tend to focus on the stars, and I think that the stars are what makes it beautiful.
Yeah.
If there was just blackness up there, what would you look at? Right? So we are the stars, and that's not ego. That's just saying that we're actually going for things that are possibly, some people might feel that they're outside of our grasp, but how do great things happen if they're not outside of our grasp?
Right.
So you are doing pretty cool stuff. If there's anything I'd like to leave with anyone, is that you've got to identify what the next right move would be for you. You've got to get to a level where you've taken the inspiration from this podcast, or you've read a book, my book, whatever book, you've spoken to someone inspiring, and you've gone, okay, this really makes sense to me. I'm fueled, right? You've got to be able to channel that fuel, channel that inspiration into a forward-moving green light, whatever that looks like for you. And if you need to get back to the motivation or the inspiration for yourself, then just keep identifying where those petrol stations would be on your journey, and just go, well, okay, I'm feeling a bit down right now. I'm going to hop back into gratitude, because that's my fueling station. And I know that I want my car to go the distance, so I've got to keep it fueled. So there's these conversations that internally you should keep having with yourself, and just also at the same time be gentle with yourself as well. Don't be too hard on not knowing all the answers straight away, because you don't, and I don't, and Heidi, I'm sure that you struggle with it too. It's like we don't have all the answers, but what we are doing is what you should be doing, which is moving forward with the answers that you have.
Absolutely. Love that, Barry. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. You have a quote in there too, but I'm not going to open it up because then we'll start a whole nother conversation about judging ourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is great, Barry. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much I appreciate you. The gratitude I have for you and what you bring to the world is so meaningful, and I really appreciate you. And I look forward to us chatting again.
For sure. Thank you, Heidi. It's been beautiful in this space with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. You take care and you
Take
enjoy
care.
your holiday.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.